On August 18, 1996, a group of 5 young tourists disappeared without a trace in Atacama Desert, the most arid landscape on the planet. For 15 years, their families lived in the torment of uncertainty, unaware of what had happened to each of their loved ones. Ground searches, helicopters, tracking dogs, nothing produced results. It was as if the desert had swallowed them. However, in 2011, a Google satellite image revealed a detail that would radically transform everything known about the case. What that photograph, captured from space, revealed would not only solve the enigma, but also unveil a truth so disturbing that it still provokes heated debate among forensic experts around the world. Before we continue with this disturbing chronicle, if you value mysterious and real cases like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new episodes. And tell us in the comments which country and city you're watching from. We're curious to know where our community is spread around the world. Now let's discover how it all began. To fully understand what happened in August 1996, we need to go back to the Chilean spring of that same year. Santiago was teeming with the energy typical of a rapidly modernizing city, and young university students had more opportunities than ever to travel and explore their own country. Alejandra Palacios, 23, was studying geology at the University of Chile. Tall, with brown hair and a vibrant gaze, she grew up in a middle-class family in the Providencia neighborhood. Her passion for rock formations and minerals made her a brilliant student, always leading the way in organizing field trips to apply her classroom knowledge. Her classmates knew her for her infectious laugh and her rare ability to find beauty in the most desolate landscapes. Through a university exchange, Alejandra met Esperanza Ibarra, a 22-year-old Spanish archaeology student. Originally from Seville, Esperanza had arrived in Chile 6 months earlier, fascinated by the pre-Columbian cultures that populated the north of the country. Small in stature, with dark skin and black hair, she possessed an unwavering will that sometimes contrasted with her youth. Her Andalusian accent charmed her new Chilean friends. The group was completed by 3 more students. Patricio Calderon, 24, was a civil engineering student and known for his meticulous planning on any trip. The son of a miner from Copiapó, he knew northern Chile like the back of his hand. Mauricio Esquivel, 23, was studying biology and joined the group because of his interest in the extremophile flora of the desert. Eventually, Leticia Cordero, 22 years old, a geography student, was the one who proposed including the Atacama in his thesis on human adaptation to hostile environments. The 5 met at a university-organized seminar on field research in extreme environments in May 1996. Their connection was instantaneous. They shared a passion for adventure, a respect for nature, and a thirst for knowledge that can only be quenched by experiencing the natural world firsthand. The idea for the trip came to them one rainy July afternoon, while they were studying in the library. Alejandra spread a topographical map of the Atacama Desert on the table, pointing with her finger to an area southeast of Antofagasta. "Here," she said, "there are salt formations that don't appear in any textbook. It would be perfect for my crystallography studies." Esperanza bent over the map, identifying nearby archaeological sites she could document for her research. One by one, each member of the group found academic reasons to join the expedition. For weeks, they painstakingly organized every detail. Patricio, with his family's mining experience, was in charge of logistics, permits, equipment, access routes, and the schedule. Mauricio researched the region's historical weather conditions for that time of year. Leticia coordinated with local authorities and ensured their families were informed of the entire itinerary. The plan was simple but ambitious. They would depart Santiago on Friday, August 16th, drive to Antofagasta, spend the night in a hotel, and continue early on Saturday to the study area. They would spend 3 days camping in 2 separate locations, collecting samples and data. On Tuesday, August 20th, they would return to Santiago. For the journey, they rented a white 1994 Toyota Land Cruiser, a sturdy and reliable vehicle for the terrain they would face. Patricio, who had been driving in the desert since his teens, would be the main driver. The group carried 40 liters of extra water, 5 days botilas, bafas worth of non-perishable food, professional camping equipment, and most importantly, a VHF radio that Patricio's father had borrowed from the mining company where he worked. Their families, though apprehensive about the adventure, trusted the group's preparation. Alejandra's parents, both teachers, had seen their daughter plan excursions with the same meticulousness. Esperanza's mother, from Spain, spoke with Patricio personally by phone to ensure he knew the area well. Mauricio's parents insisted he bring extra medication for the asthma he had suffered from since childhood. On Thursday of August 15th, the group gathered for the last time at the apartment Alejandra shared with colleagues in Ñuñoa. They reviewed their itinerary once more, checked their equipment, and took a photo next to the map spread out on the dining room table. In that photograph, which would later become one of the last known images of the 5 of them together, they appear smiling, with backpacks and field equipment neatly arranged at their feet. That same night, Esperanza sent a letter to her parents in Seville. In it, in her small, precise handwriting, she described her excitement about the expedition and promised to send postcards from Antofagasta. "The Atacama Desert is like Mars on Earth," she wrote. "But here, human history spans thousands of years. It's exactly the kind of experience I came to Chile to seek." None of them could have imagined that, in less than 72 hours, that carefully planned expedition would turn into one of the most intriguing disappearances in Chilean history. Friday, August 16th, 1996, dawned with clear skies in Santiago and a temperature of 8 degrees, now 47 degrees, promising a sunny winter day. At 6:30 am, Patricio picked up the rental car. The rental company employee would later recall that the young man thoroughly inspected the condition of the Toyota Land Cruiser, checking the oil and water levels and tire pressure with a dedicated gauge. At 7:45 a.m., the group met at Alejandra's house. Neighbors saw them loading their equipment into the vehicle: backpacks, sleeping bags, a 5-person tent, water jugs, and boxes of scientific instruments. They look so professional, a neighbor would say, like those scientists we see in documentaries. At 8:30 a.m. sharp, the white Toyota, license plate CG4829, left Santiago on Route 5 Norte. The last urban record of its passage was at 9:15 a.m. when they paid the Lampa toll. The attendant remembered the group because Esperanza Fonti, the Spanish student, struck up a conversation about the history of the small town, maintaining a brief but lively conversation. The trip was uneventful. At 2:30 p.m., they stopped in Vallenar for lunch at the restaurant El Minero. The owner, who personally served them, recalled in his statement to the police that they ordered a lamb stew and that the young Spanish woman took photos of the restaurant's interior, decorated with old mining tools. The boy who seemed to be the leader, the owner stated, inquired specifically about the road conditions toward Antofagasta. They arrived in Antofagasta around 7 p.m. They checked into the Hotel Terrado, a mid-range establishment downtown. The receptionist on duty wrote their details in the guest book, which would later become crucial evidence. They reserved 3 rooms. That night, they dined at the hotel restaurant. The waiter remembered them because they spread topographical maps on the table while they ate, planning the next day's route. "The Spanish girl," he would say, "took notes of everything I said about the archaeological sites in the region." At 10:30 p.m., they went to their rooms. Alejandra called her parents from the hotel phone, an 8-minute conversation recorded on the phone bill. Her mother, Teresa Palacios, remembered every word of that call. "Mom, we arrived perfectly safe. We're going to the desert early tomorrow morning. Everything is going as planned. I'll call you on Tuesday when we get back." Saturday, August 17th, dawned with completely clear skies. At 6 a.m., the group ate breakfast at the hotel. At 7:30 a.m., they loaded up the vehicle and drove to a gas station on the northern outskirts of town. The attendant remembered the encounter clearly. They filled the tank completely and bought 2 extra 20-liter cans, along with snacks and more water. The driver checked the tire pressure again, the attendant stated. "He told me he knew the desert because his father was a miner. I could tell he knew what he was doing. At 8:15 a.m., the Toyota Land Cruiser took Route B355 heading southeast, entering the Atacama Desert. This was the last time anyone saw them alive. According to the original plan, the group was supposed to reach their first camp around 11 a.m. on Saturday. The chosen location was 47 kilometers from the main route, following an abandoned mining road Patricio had known since his adolescence, in an area of salt formations. When Tuesday, then August 20th, arrived and they didn't return as planned, the families initially assumed they had overstayed their stay. However, concern set in when Alejandra failed to attend an important academic meeting on Wednesday, then August 21st. Her parents called the hotel in Antofagasta, and the receptionist confirmed that the group had left on Saturday morning and had not returned. On Thursday, August 22nd, Alejandra's mother, Teresa Palacios, filed the first missing person report. That same day, Antofagasta police began the first search in the area where the young people were allegedly headed. The captain who led the initial operation mobilized 4 vehicles and an Air Force helicopter for 5 days. They methodically searched Route B355 and all secondary roads within a 100-kilometer radius. They found tire tracks consistent with the missing vehicle, but the tracks were lost in the rocky areas, where the desert wind erases any trace within hours. On August 30th, the search intensified with the arrival of volunteers, including university classmates and family members. Mauricio's father, Humberto Esquivel, took time off from work to join the search in person. "My son knew the desert," he told the press. Something had to happen. Mauricio would never take unnecessary risks. Throughout September, searches continued sporadically. Abandoned mines were inspected, and observation posts were established at strategic points. The most widely accepted hypothesis at the time was that the vehicle had suffered a breakdown in an extremely isolated area, where radio communication was impossible due to the mountainous terrain. In the Atacama, a mechanical failure in the wrong place can be fatal. Daytime temperatures exceed 30 degrees Celsius, even in winter, while at night they can drop below freezing. Without water and communication, dehydration can lead to death in less than 3 days. However, there were details that didn't fit this theory. The group was carrying enough water for a week, survival gear, and most importantly, Patricio was too experienced to venture into areas without radio coverage, without first reporting their exact position. The mystery deepened when, in October 1996, a commercial pilot reported seeing metallic reflections in an area approximately 60 kilometers from where the group was supposed to be. An expedition was sent to the location, but found nothing. In December 1996, the official search was suspended. The 5 students were officially declared missing, and their families were left in the terrible uncertainty of not knowing what had happened to their loved ones. The years following the disappearance profoundly transformed the lives of the families involved. In Santiago, the Palacios home became a meeting place for parents who had lost children in similar circumstances. Teresa Palacios, Alejandra's mother, founded an organization in 1998 to lobby for better search protocols in remote areas. The first 2 years were the hardest. Teresa recalled in an interview, "We couldn't grieve because there was no certainty. It was a terrible emotional limbo. I woke up every day thinking that maybe that would be the day Alejandra would return." In Spain, Esperanza Ibarra's parents faced an even more complex situation. Her mother, Carmen, flew to Chile and remained for 3 months participating in the search. Her husband, Florencio, sold his small business in Seville to finance the trip. Esperanza was our only daughter, Carmen told a Spanish newspaper in 1999, and we couldn't return to Spain knowing she was lost somewhere in the desert. The Calderon family in Copiapó lived the tragedy with an added sense of guilt. Patricio's father, Abundio, constantly blamed himself for having taught his son to love the desert. "I taught him that the desert was his second home," he would say years later. He left his job in the mine and dedicated himself for years to personally exploring every corner of the Atacama, following leads that often proved fruitless. Mauricio Esquivel's parents channeled their grief differently, establishing a scholarship in their son's name at the University of Chile. The family of Leticia Cordero, the youngest, never recovered. Her parents separated, unable to cope with the loss. During the first 5 years, more than 20 alleged sightings of the young men were reported, each generating a wave of hope followed by inevitable disappointment. In 2001, human remains found in a ravine created suspense for weeks, but the bones turned out to belong to a miner who had disappeared in the 1970s. Over time, alternative theories gained traction. The tabloid press persisted in suggesting they had been victims of drug traffickers, but the police dismissed the idea due to a lack of evidence. In 2004, a private investigator hired by the families proposed a more plausible theory. The group might have altered their route to investigate an unexpected scientific find. This idea gained credence when it was discovered that Esperanza had contacted a local archaeologist, who mentioned the existence of undocumented petroglyphs in a more remote area, but warned her of the dangers. Years passed, and the case gradually faded from public attention. In 2008, 12 years after the disappearance, Chilean authorities officially declared the 5 young people dead. The legal declaration, however, brought no peace. "Oh, a piece of paper doesn't change anything," Teresa Palacios declared at the time. "I will continue searching for my daughter until the day I die." In 2009, technology offered a new, faint hope. With Google Earth satellite imagery becoming increasingly clear, some family members, led by Teresa, began methodically examining aerial photographs of the desert. It was an obsessive, exhausting search. "Mawa, I knew it was like looking for a needle in a haystack," she would admit. "But it was the only thing left for me to do." What neither family knew was that their desperate search was about to yield results in the most unexpected way possible. What neither family knew was that their obsessive search was about to bear fruit in the most unexpected way. On March 23, 2011, 15 years and 7 months after the disappearance, Cristina Montes, a 34-year-old investigative journalist for the newspaper The Mercury Dice, was preparing a special report on missing persons cases in Chile. Her intention was to examine how new technologies could aid old investigations. Cristina had contacted Teresa Palacios a week earlier for an interview. During the conversation, Teresa mentioned her nightly habit of examining Google Earth images. "I know it sounds desperate," she said, "but it's all I have left. I've already reviewed hundreds of square kilometers, pixel by pixel." Intrigued by this methodology, Cristina decided to include a segment on how families were using technology to continue their private searches. On the evening of March 22nd, after watching Teresa browse satellite images for 2 hours, Cristina returned to her apartment, taking with her the coordinates of the area where the students were believed to have disappeared. As a specialized journalist, she had access to more sophisticated image analysis software. Working until dawn, Cristina began systematically examining a vast area, using a program that allowed her to overlay satellite images from different years to detect changes in the terrain. At 2:47 a.m. on March 23rd, while zooming in on a rocky area 73 kilometers southeast of Antofagasta, something caught her eye. In an image from October 2010, there was a barely noticeable anomaly, a straight line, too perfect to be natural, accompanied by a shadow that didn't match the relief. "At first, I thought it was an error in the image processing," she would later explain, "but when I compared it with photos from previous years, I saw that the anomaly didn't appear in images taken before 2008. Something had changed there." Cristina zoomed in on the image as much as possible. What she saw made her gasp. The straight line revealed itself as the unmistakable shape of a rectangular vehicle, partially buried. The shadow was actually the outline of something metallic, reflecting the sunlight. At 3:15 a.m., Cristina called Teresa Palacios. "I need you to come to my house right now," she said. "I think I found something." Teresa and her husband arrived at 4:30 a.m. When they saw the image on the screen, there was complete silence. "It's a vehicle," Teresa's husband finally whispered, "just the right size, in a place where a vehicle should never be." The exact coordinates, 26 kilometers from the original camp, were in an extremely remote area with no known roads. Cristina pointed out another crucial fact. The object only became visible between 2009 and 2010. Teresa's husband, an engineer, speculated that the anomalous rainfall of 2010 could have caused erosion, partially exposing something that had been buried for over a decade. At 6 past time, Cristina contacted Captain Rogelio Serrano, the original investigator, now at the Antofagasta Investigation Center. Upon seeing the coordinates, Serrano knew it was significant. When that area had never been systematically searched because it seemed impossible that they had gotten there by accident, he would recall. Protocol required a ground-based verification, but the remote location would require days of planning. Serrano made an unconventional decision. He directly contacted Abundio Calderon, Patricio's father, the family's greatest desert expert. "Don Abundio," he said over the phone, "I need your help to verify something, but be prepared for the possibility that we might find what we've been searching for 15 years. On March 25, 2011, an expedition consisting of Serrano, 2 experts, Abundio Calderon, and a local guide set out in the direction of the coordinates. What they found would change everything we thought we knew about the disappearance of the 5 students. The expedition set off at 7:30 a.m. Much why. On March 25, 2011, the journey to the nearest point accessible by conventional roads took 3.5 hours. From there, they would have to navigate 18 kilometers of rocky, trackless terrain, guided only by GPS coordinates and Abundio's vast experience in the desert. The terrain was more difficult than we expected. One of the team's experts recalled, "There were deep ravines not on the maps and rock formations that forced us to take constant detours. I immediately understood why this area had never been systematically searched." At 2:20 p.m., after advancing slowly for more than 3 hours, the GPS indicated they were less than 500 meters from their target. Abundio stopped his vehicle and grabbed long-range binoculars. "Over there," he said after several minutes, pointing to an area where massive volcanic rocks cast deep shadows. "There's something metallic reflecting the sunlight. Something that definitely doesn't belong here." Captain Serrano established the approach protocol as a possible crime scene. The area should be documented before any disturbances were made. At 2:45 p.m., the team arrived on foot at the location identified in the satellite imagery. What they found confirmed their deepest suspicions and raised new and disconcerting questions. Partially buried under rocks and sediment, with only the roof and part of the windshield visible, was a white Toyota Land Cruiser. The rear license plate, though corroded from 15 years of exposure, was still legible, CG 4829. "It was the strangest moment of my career," Serrano would describe. "We had been looking for this vehicle for 15 years, and here it was, in a place where, by all logic, it should never have been." Abundio Calderon approached the vehicle, trembling through the dirty windshield. "I could barely make out shapes inside. The first question that arose was, how had the vehicle gotten there? My son knew the desert well," Abundio murmured, "but not well enough to get here. This is a long way from any place he knew." The expert began documenting the scene. What caught his attention most was the vehicle's position. It was wedged into a natural depression among the rocks, as if it had been deliberately placed there to remain hidden. "It doesn't look like an accident," he observed. "This Toyota was positioned to be invisible from any access route." Serrano established a perimeter and radioed Antofagasta to request a full forensic team and a helicopter. The excavation would require specialized procedures. While they waited, the team carefully searched the surrounding area. About 30 meters from the vehicle, a sergeant found something that added another layer of mystery: the remains of a campfire used for several days. "There are ashes and food packaging," he reported. "But here's the strange thing. Judging by the state of deterioration, I'd say this campfire was used years after 1996. The observation was disconcerting. If the fire was a later date, it meant someone had been to that remote location years after the disappearance." Abundio examined the remains with decades of experience. "This fire was made with wood that isn't from here," he determined. "And look at this." He pointed to marks in the hardened sand. "Boot prints, not shoes. Someone was here prepared for hard work." At 5:30 p.m., the helicopter arrived with the Santiago forensic team, including renowned forensic anthropologist Dr. Violeta Sandoval. She immediately established strict protocols for the excavation, which began at 6 p.m., taking advantage of the last hours of daylight. What they discovered inside would not only answer questions but create a nightmare no one had ever imagined. The morning of March 26, 2011, dawned brightly in the Atacama Desert. At 7 a.m., the forensic team resumed excavating the Toyota Land Cruiser, now with the sober certainty that they were investigating a multiple homicide. Dr. Violeta Sandoval worked for 3 hours, meticulously documenting the position of the remains. Her preliminary conclusions were disturbing. The 3 sets of remains belonged to Patricio Calderon, Mauricio Esquivel, and Leticia Cordero. All showed signs of blunt head trauma, inconsistent with a death by natural causes. These people were murdered, Sandoval told Captain Serrano, and the fracture patterns on their skulls indicate they were struck with heavy objects, probably rocks. And there's one more thing. Based on the state of decomposition, I'd say these bodies haven't been here for 15 years. This last observation was the most disconcerting of all. If the remains hadn't been buried since 1996, it meant the students had been kept alive somewhere for an undetermined period before being killed and transported to this remote location. As the forensic team continued their work, Abundio Calderon explored the surroundings with the urgency of a father who had just confirmed his son's death, approximately 200 meters from the vehicle. Following a natural crevice between the rocks, he found something that would chill any investigator's blood. Partially hidden in a deep fissure was a makeshift structure, built of stones and dry branches, clearly designed to be invisible. "Captain Serrano!" Abundio shouted. "You have to see this." When Serrano and his team arrived, they found what could only be described as a primitive prison. The structure measured approximately 2 by 3 meters, with stone walls nearly 1.5 meters high. Inside, there was evidence of human occupation, remains of blankets, food packaging, and, most disturbing of all, marks carved into the rocks, a record of days. A sergeant examined the marks. They are groups of 5 lines crossed by a 6th, the classic method for counting days. He reported, "There are 847 marks. That's more than 2 years." The implication was terrifying. The students, or at least some of them, had been held captive for more than 2 years before being murdered. Dr. Sandoval and her team moved operations to the new location. In a corner of the structure, buried under years of sediment, they found an object that would provide the first real clue: a spiral notebook protected by a makeshift plastic bag. "It's Esperanza's handwriting," Abundio confirmed, recognizing the handwriting he'd seen preparing for the trip. The stained pages told a story of survival, terror, and betrayal. The first legible entry was dated August 25, 1996, a week after the disappearance. "It's 7. Teodoro, he brought us water again. He says he'll free us when his brother returns from Bolivia. Patricio is very ill, with a high fever. Mauricio can barely breathe. He needs his asthma medication. Leticia cries all the time. Alejandra tries to keep us together, but I can see in her eyes that she's losing hope." Pages later, an undated entry revealed more details. "Teodoro says we can't leave because we saw the place where they keep the things they bring from Bolivia. He says it's for our safety, that there are dangerous people who would kill us. We don't believe him, but we have no choice. He's armed and knows the desert better than we do." The reference to Bolivia suggested drug trafficking. A December 1996 entry showed the group's deterioration. "Patricio tried to escape last night. Teodoro caught up with him and beat him terribly. He said that if anyone else tries to escape, he will kill the other 4. We no longer pretend that we are going to get out of here." The most disturbing entry was from March 1998, almost 2 years after the kidnapping. Teodoro brought his brother, Demetrius. "They argued a lot about what to do with us. Demetrio says it's too dangerous to keep us here. Teodoro says he can't let us go because we know too much. Alejandra and I understand what this means. We decided that if they're going to kill us, at least one of us has to try to escape and tell the truth." The last legible entry, shaky and undated, was a cry of despair. "They took Patricio, Mauricio, and Leticia this morning. They said they were going to transfer them. We heard screams in the distance. Alejandra and I know they're not coming back. Teodoro says we're different, that we can be useful. I don't know what that means, but I'd rather die than find out. The diary ended abruptly. For the first time in 15 years, the research had names: Teodoro and Demetrio. Understood. The investigation now has names, and the mystery deepens even further. Let's move on to the next act, where the criminals' identities are revealed and a shocking discovery changes the course of the search. The diary had ended abruptly, but the names, Teodoro and Demetrio, gave investigators, for the first time in 15 years, concrete leads to follow. Captain Serrano acted immediately. I need a survey of all records of individuals with those names in the region during the 1990s. He ordered Sergeant Valle over the radio and map all known drug trafficking routes between Chile and Bolivia at that time. While the search for information continued in Antofagasta, the field team continued to search the makeshift prison area. They found more evidence of a prolonged occupation, food scraps, fragments of clothing, and, significantly, a small transistor radio that still contained corroded batteries. A technician examined the radio. "Oh, the model is from the 1990s, he determined. But these batteries are more recent, probably from 2008 or 2009. Someone was using this place long after the original disappearance. At 3:30 p.m., Sergeant Valle returned with information about the names. His findings were the first major breakthrough in identifying those responsible. I found the records of two brothers, Theodore and Demetrius Acosta, arrested in Iquique in 1999 for cocaine trafficking. He said, police records indicate that they operated a route between Bolivia and Chilean ports, using the Atacama Desert as a transit point. Both grew up in the region and knew the desert intimately, Valle continued, revealing the brothers' fate. Here's the crux. Teodoro Acosta was released from prison in 2008 for good behavior. Demetrio died in prison in 2003, stabbed during a fight. This explained everything. The recent bonfire, the batteries in the radio. Teodoro had returned to his old base of operations after serving his sentence. With the suspects identified, Serrano ordered an expanded search. If Alejandra and Esperanza had managed to escape or been taken elsewhere, there could be more evidence. At 4:45 p.m., using metal detectors, investigators found something buried 50 meters from the main structure. It was a small metal box, the type used for ammunition, buried less than a meter deep. Inside the box, protected by plastic bags, were documents that would provide the final answer to the fate of the two young women. The box contained Polaroid photographs, handwritten papers, and, most shocking of all, the identity documents of the 5 victims. The photos showed the students at different points in their captivity. Unequivocal proof that they had been alive for much longer than anyone had imagined. But the most startling revelation was in a letter, written in small, meticulous handwriting, signed by Alejandra Palacios and dated April 1999. "To whoever finds this," began the letter. "My name is Alejandra Palacios. I have been a prisoner with my friends in the Atacama Desert since August 1996. Teodoro and Demetrio Acosta kidnapped us when we accidentally discovered their drug operation. They killed Patricio, Mauricio, and Leticia in March 1998. Esperanza and I managed to buy time, convincing Teodoro that we could be useful, but we know he will eventually kill us too. If you're reading this, we're probably dead, but I need you to know the truth. Esperanza managed to escape during a sandstorm in February 1999. I told her to run to Antofagasta and contact the police. I don't know if she made it. I stayed because I'm too weak to make the trip. Teodoro believes Esperanza died in the desert, but I know she's strong. If she's alive, she'll tell the truth. Please find our families. Tell them we love them and that we fought to survive until the end. Teodoro Acosta is responsible. He and his brother kept us here so we couldn't report their operation. We didn't deserve to die for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The letter was accompanied by a hand-drawn map showing the location of several drug trafficker hideouts, including the spot where they had buried the vehicle. Serrano read the letter aloud to the team. The silence was broken only by Abundio Calderon's suppressed sobs. "That means Esperanza might be alive," Dr. Sandoval murmured. "If she managed to escape in 1999, she might have survived." This possibility immediately shifted the investigation's priorities. They were no longer just looking for bodies. They were looking for a witness, a survivor. The revelation of Alejandra's letter turned a crime scene into a desperate search for a witness. "This means Esperanza might be alive," Dr. Sandoval murmured. "If she managed to escape in 1999, she might have survived." This possibility instantly shifted priorities. They were no longer just searching for the dead. They were searching for a survivor. Captain Serrano urgently contacted immigration authorities. The order was clear: review all records of people who had attempted to leave Chile for Spain between February and December 1999, using the name Esperanza Ibarra, or any variation. While this bureaucratic search was underway, the field team continued to comb the area, this time searching for Alejandra's remains. At 6:20 p.m., just 30 meters from where the metal box was found, detectives identified another anomaly. It was a shallow grave, clearly dug in haste. The remains found there corresponded to a young woman. Among the personal items buried with her was a ring with the initials AP, which the Palacios family confirmed belonged to Alejandra. Preliminary forensic analysis indicated that she had died several months after writing the letter, likely in early 2000. Unlike the others, her body showed no signs of violent trauma, suggesting she succumbed after years of captivity in extreme conditions. At 8:30 a.m., the immigration information arrived. The results were surprising. There was no record of Esperanza Ibarra attempting to leave Chile under her real name. However, there was one intriguing record that caught the investigators' attention. On November 23, 1999, a woman who identified herself as Carmen Sevilla was found dehydrated and disoriented near the Pan American Highway, 80 kilometers south of Antofagasta. The woman, who appeared to be European and spoke Spanish with a foreign accent, was hospitalized for 2 weeks with severe dehydration and psychological trauma. Medical records indicated that she suffered from severe amnesia, unable to remember her identity or how she had arrived in the desert. With no known family in Chile and no documents, she was transferred to a mental health center in Santiago, where she remained until 2001. "We need to locate this woman immediately," Serrano ordered. "If you are Esperanza Ibarra, you are the only living witness to what really happened." The trail of CMOS, Carmen Sevilla, led investigators to a final revelation that would tragically complete the story. Mental health center records showed that the patient had gradually regained her memory during 2001. However, instead of revealing her identity, she applied for political asylum, claiming to be a victim of persecution in her home country, which she identified as Colombia. In 2002, she emigrated to Canada under a refugee program, with UN documents identifying her as Carmen Sevilla, a 28-year-old Colombian citizen. On March 28, 2011, after 3 days of intense investigation with Canadian authorities, investigators located her in Vancouver. Confronted with the evidence from the case and photographs of the students, Carmen Sevilla finally admitted her true identity. She was Esperanza Ibarra. In a video interview, Esperanza explained why she hid her identity for more than a decade. "When I managed to escape in 1999, I was completely traumatized," she said. "I saw my friends die. I lived in captivity for almost 3 years. When I got to the hospital, my mind simply shut down. I couldn't remember who I was. When my memory started to return, fear took over. Teodoro repeatedly told me he had contacts in the police, that if I spoke, he would find me and kill me. I had nightmares about him chasing me. I invented the identity of Carmen Sevilla to protect myself," she continued. "Only when I learned that Teodoro had been arrested and died did I consider revealing the truth. But by then, I had already built a new life in Canada. I had a job, friends, a new identity. Revealing who I was meant destroying everything I had built to survive. Esperanza's testimony provided the final details. The students had stumbled upon an underground warehouse where the Acosta brothers stored cocaine. They said they would hold us for a few hours, Esperanza recalled. But when they realized we were university students and that there would be an extensive search, they decided they couldn't release us. The captivity lasted so long because the brothers used them as labor. The murders of Patricio, Mauricio, and Leticia occurred because Demetrio, the more violent brother, decided that keeping 5 prisoners was too risky. Esperanza's escape was only possible during a severe sandstorm. I ran for 2 days toward what I thought was the road, she recalled. I drank my own urine to survive. When they found me, I weighed less than 40 kilos. With Esperanza's testimony, the case was officially closed on April 15, 2011. The Acosta brothers were already dead. The remains of the 4 victims were returned to their families. Esperanza Ibarra returned to Spain to be reunited with her parents after 15 years. In a final press conference, Captain Serrano reflected, "This case teaches us that in the desert, crimes can remain hidden for decades, but it also teaches us that modern technology, combined with the determination of families who never give up, can finally reveal the truth, no matter how much time has passed." The story of the 5 students became a tragic reminder of how young lives can be destroyed by being in the wrong place at the wrong time, but also of how persistence and technology can eventually bring justice to the most hopeless cases.